Hello, welcome to the Bullying Reported Please podcast. I am your hostess, E. Jones Blacksher. Today, we'll continue diving into a topic that is difficult but incredibly important: suicide awareness and prevention. Every year, hundreds of thousands of lives are lost to suicide, leaving behind grieving families, friends, and communities. But even more heartbreaking is the fact that many of these tragedies are preventable with the right support, understanding, and action. In today's episode, we'll be discussing veteran suicides, risk, the rates, and some resources available to help veterans. We want to foster an open, honest communication about mental health and how we as individuals and as a society can make a difference with our veterans. From this podcast, I'm certainly hoping that you'll get a better understanding of some of the challenges we as veterans face every day. So whether you're tuning in because you've been affected by suicide personally, or you just simply want to better understand and how to support others regardless to why you're here, we're glad you are here. So let's work together to break the stigma, encourage connection, and create a world where no one feels that suicide is their only option. So let's get started. The highest suicide rate among U.S. veterans have been more recently. Now, veterans do have, and records show, that veterans have a 72% higher suicide rate than the average. And the highest suicide rate among U.S. veterans have been in the global war on terror. That is the post-11 time frame. And that rate is more than 1.5% higher than non-veterans. And the age limit, the age group, actually is 18 to 34. That is especially concerning. With those rates exceed those of veterans from other generations. Now, the many Iraq and Afghanistan veterans experienced multiple deployments, which can increase their exposure to combat and trauma. And that may be one reason why there's such a high suicide rate among this demographics of veterans. Well, this is just Emma speaking. I'm thinking that the data is more compiled. As we know better, we do better. So we're keeping better records now than we did during the Vietnam era, as well as the World War II and the Korean War. Now, the Vietnam veterans also experienced high rates of suicide, particularly in the years immediately following the war. But now they've been surpassed by post 9/11 veterans in terms of overall rates. Now, I feel, well, you know what a lot of the Vietnam veterans faced when they came back home. Our own nation turned against these veterans, called them baby killers. And a lot of that was lack of understanding. When we volunteer, or during this time, we're drafted in the military, we take an oath to defend this country. So we're not doing this on our own. This is our job to protect this country. However, the Vietnam era veterans, they were definitely not welcomed back as heroes to the United States, which could have led to long-term mental health challenges. And today, they still continue to face some of these challenges. but the focus has shifted now to the young veterans from more recent conflicts. The World War II and Korean War, they also face significant challenges. This is trauma. You're talking about war. Although recognition of mental health issues and suicide prevention was not as robust during that time, so precise data is very hard to come by. So, and I feel that part of these higher stats for younger veterans is because of more data is being kept, and there's more concern on the effects of trauma, especially during war. Now, let's be clear. Let me make this perfectly clear. You do not have to be. A veteran does not have to be a combat veteran to be at risk for suicide. Just because the veteran did not go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, and anywhere else, Korea, Vietnam, anywhere else we went and deployed to and was directly involved in combat, that does not in itself make a veteran suicidal. However, there are challenges that we do face every day. So again, you do not have to be a combat veteran. A veteran does not have to have been in combat to be at risk of suicide. Now, have you heard the term skating, the phrase rather, skating on a razor's edge? Have you heard that term? Well, let me try to explain what that means. Skating on a razor's edge, it is when you're in a highly precarious or a dangerous situation where one wrong move, just one, could lead to a disaster. And it often conveys the idea of navigating through challenges or risk that with a fine balance. And sometimes skating on that razor's edge because of the challenges that veterans face every day. That's during and after their military services. We often walk a fine line between resilience, vulnerability, and even balancing our physical and mental health, that career transition, relationships, while all the time we're trying to cope with lasting effects of the experiences in or out of combat service environments. So for many veterans, life after the service can feel like skating on a razor's edge, where issues like the PTSD, injury recovery, or just readjusting to civilian life may bring about significant challenges. An example of a veteran skating on a razor's edge. They might be transitioning back to civilian life, let's just say after a combat deployment. And this period can be extremely precarious for several reasons. Let's just talk about serving multiple tours, return home with physical injuries and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And they're trying to navigate the complexities of getting a civilian job. All the time, they're still dealing with these mental and physical health challenges, trying to maintain a relationship with family and friends who may not fully understand their experiences. So you see, you're all caught up. You can get all caught up in this. It's a balancing act. And you could either slip the wrong way or you can tilt in the right direction. Let's look at some of the risk factors, and you'll see how these risk factors for suicide in veterans, you'll understand why veterans walking on the razor's edge, skating, on the razor's edge. The post-traumatic stress syndrome, disorder, used to be called syndrome, disorder, disease, but now post-traumatic stress disorder. Veterans who have experienced combat, or, as I said earlier, don't have to have been in combat, or traumatic events. Traumatic events. It could be the loss of a buddy. That buddy could have been killed in combat. That buddy could have been killed in a car accident. Regardless, it is traumatic to you. We're at a higher risk for developing PTSD, which could significantly increase the suicide risk. Depression, anxiety, they're common and closely associated with the suicidal behavior. Substance abuse. Veterans struggling with alcohol or drug abuse are more likely to engage in those risky behaviors. Getting in your car after you have consumed a lot of alcohol or ingested drugs, driving 100 miles an hour. What are you doing? That behavior is so risky. It is very risky. The thrill, it is a thrill seekers, risky behavior. You also you have veterans out here who suffer from traumatic brain injury. That's common, especially among those that's been in combat zones with the IEDs, explosions, accidents. Head injuries can lead to cognitive and emotional challenges, including impulsivity and depression. Chronic pain, physical disabilities. Physical pain combined with mental health challenges can lead to feelings of hopelessness, which is a key factor for suicide. Social isolation. We struggle with that. A lot of us struggle with that. Loss of camaraderie and community. Living on a military installation and you're working with fellow soldiers, sailors, Air Force, Marine, fellow service members, and you're working with them practically 24/7, because when you're in the military, you do not get a holiday. You're on duty 24/7, 365.25 days a year. You are at work, meaning you can be called up at any time, anytime. So we form a bond. We have a bond. And after leaving the military service and try to talk to people that are not familiar, who've never been in, and just not familiar with the military life, it is very difficult to hold a conversation. We're talking about the military. They're talking about something that's going on out here. And to us, they're speaking a foreign language. To them, we're speaking a foreign language. So yes, that social isolation. We don't have that. We go back, even going back home to our own communities. We don't have that camaraderie and a sense of community, that social support system. And not having that increases the suicide risk. When you have folks not speaking the same language, and it's difficult to communicate. Many of us are more comfortable staying in an area such as near military installations where there's a large concentration of military people, be them veterans or even active duty. And many of us go back into work in our same environment that we left. So sometimes it is hard for us to transition back to military life, civilian life, finding jobs, financial instability, and adapting to the non-military environment. The struggles are real. And they could lead to purposelessness, hopelessness, and again, contributing to suicide thoughts. And oh yeah, access to firearms. All my military people out there, you know, if you have any objections to carrying a firearm in the military, you just go on home. Just go on back home. This is part of our job. This is what we volunteered to do. We own firearms, and we usually have firearms after we transition from the military. Nearly 70% of veterans' suicides involve firearms. So that risk is there because we own firearms. That stigma around mental health is a super big risk factor. Definitely skating on a razor's edge with that. The stigma around mental health. And the terrible part about it is many of us cannot see it until so much damage has been done and or somebody pointed out to us. And it still might take a minute because we can be in a denial. We won't seek help for mental health issues due to that stigma, especially out here in the civilian sector, non-military, because they see us as strong. Oh, you strong. You've been in the military. You can do this. You can do that because you've been in the military. All along, not understanding the challenges that we face. Needing mental health care, even getting help for physical ailments. We've always been taught, you're strong, be strong. Don't let them see you weak. You're not weak. So we think sometimes seeking help, it makes us weak. And we don't want to be seen as that. So it prevents us from seeking the treatment that we need. And family doesn't understand. I have had to really educate my family on the challenges, the mental health challenges that we face. Because I've always been seen as a strong person. You are strong. Yes, but I'm stronger now because I got the help that I needed. But I did not realize I had any of these risk factors. I did not realize that I was definitely skating on a razor's edge. It was pointed out to me. Relationship problems. Divorce rates are usually higher among veterans because it's just difficult. Personal relationships, divorce, separation, domestic violence, or just strange family relationships are common triggers for suicidal behavior. There are many factors out here. Unemployment, financial stress. One thing about in the military, we knew what we was going to get paid. We knew when we were going to get paid. It was going in the bank. We knew exactly what we had to spend. So we had that security. But transitioning from the military, looking for a job, holding down a job, you just kind of out here navigating your way through, which again, stressful. Your combat experience make you a higher risk for suicide. Exposure to violence, death, combat trauma. Yes, it does have a lasting psychological effect. Lack of access to health care. We're so used to going on sick call anytime of day, any time of night, and being seen. Some of these areas are pretty small, and you just don't have that access. It's not right there. You just call a buddy and tell them to come pick you up. You're not feeling well, take you to the hospital. Well, out here in the civilian world, that may not be as easily accessible as living on a military installation. And previous suicide attempts, those are risk factors, big risk factors. So this is some of the things that our civilian counterparts need to know and understand. If we don't talk, it's not because we are shy or we've gotten into ourselves. Some of the time, when we say, give me a minute, let me process this, then we would appreciate it if you would give us that time to process it. Because again, it could tilt us one way or the other. And we often, again, don't get the help that we need to cope with these challenges of transitioning back to the civilian world, because we're definitely not the same person coming back as we were when we left, especially having a career and with deployments. And remember, suicide is preventable with the timely intervention, the support, and the treatment. Crisis helplines, mental health services, open conversation. Got to talk about it. And many of us veterans do not want to talk about our experiences, especially our traumatic experiences. They have the Veterans Crisis Line. They got the text and online chat line. Just text 838-255. There are suicide prevention apps that the VA offer. The PTSD coach. VA got suicide prevention coordinators. There's more emphasis being placed on mental health by the VA daily, based on research, doing their analysis, and based on surveys, what we tell them. They also have Reach Vet program, recovery engagement and coordination for health, veterans enhanced treatment. They use the predictive analysis to identify veterans at higher risk of suicide, and then they contact the veteran. They also have the vet centers. I used to work at a vet center in Alabama, and there are trained counselors in there to work with our veterans, mental health, that Tai Chi, and on and on. I mean, that was a great experience working there too. And then the one that I particularly like is Make the Connection. Make the Connection. www.maketheconnection.net. It's a VA initiative that people share their personal stories about they face mental health challenges and they've got help. And the resource is designed to inspire others to reach out for support. Write this down. www.maketheconnection.net. And you will find some truly inspiring stories on people, veterans that have gone through the mental health struggles and what they did to come out on the other side. So everything is not negative. We just want to make you aware of the risk factors and to try to give you a better understanding, even for the veterans themselves, to get a better understanding. Skating on razor's edge, hypervigilance. Oh my, you got to check your doors 10 times before you go to sleep. You got to make sure everything is okay. That we're constantly in a state of on the ready. That could tilt again either way. It could go good or bad. There's no way that I can cover everything regarding veterans, risk factors, resources, and the suicide. There's no way that we can cover all that in one podcast. And that could be a podcast that goes on and on and on forever. However, our next episode will devote it to women military service members, active duty, and veterans. Because trust me, we have our own unique challenges. And as we come to a close of today's podcast on veterans suicide, I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining this important conversation. Suicide is very complex, but it's one that we can confront together by staying informed, supporting one another, and fostering an environment where it's okay to ask for help. So if you or someone you know is struggling, remember, you're not alone. There are people ready to listen, whether it's a friend, family member, or a professional. Find someone you trust. Find someone you trust. Don't hesitate. Please don't hesitate to reach out for help. The Veterans Crisis Line is 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. The National Suicide Prevention Line is 988. Or text HELLO to 741-7414 for immediate support. Thank you again for being part of this crucial conversation. And please, like, share, and invite someone you know to watch this podcast. Share this podcast with them and subscribe. So until next time, take care of yourself and others. Stay safe, stay connected, and remember, there's always hope. I am E. Jones Blacksher, your hostess for Bullying Reported Please.